for such a wonderful introduction. How many of you attended the area contest? All right, did you guys have fun?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a fun time. So my high performance leadership project was pulling together this. I have a green light, it looks like already. That put our high Am I done already? Right. The high performance leadership project, mine was to pull together the area contest and organize it, get all the people together that were working on everything, make sure the judges were there, and it had a number of different components. And what I presented, I'll review a little bit of what I didn't presented last time, but it was sort of how I approached it and how I organized pulling it together. So we'll start off with what the vision was. The vision of the contest was to experience the value, which is our district theme for this year, of participating in an area contest and what that entails. And that has a mission to go along with it. And the mission is planning and implementing the area contest in order to pick those best speakers that would move forward into the division contest and the district contest. We had a number of core values, and the core values are really important because they provide you guidance to go through and organize how you want to pull everything together. So the first one was preparation. I really wanted everybody to be prepared for what they were doing, have their jobs and understand it. And teamwork. Teamwork was really important in this contest because I wanted everyone to know what everybody else was doing and so that they could help with it if need be. And then of course we have to have fun because it is Toastmasters. And timeliness. One of the things we always have a challenge with is keeping things on time. That was something important. And so when you have a framework like this of core values, let's see if there's one more. I think that might be, oh no, fairness. Yes, we need to make sure we have a fair contest. And thanks to Carl, our chief judge, we really did. And so creating core values like this is really helpful in any project that you do because it really gives you focus on how you're going to proceed with it. If without these, you could say, oh, I'm going to put an area contest on, I'm going to call the people who've done it before, and we're all going to do it, and it'll work. It'll be just fine. We know it'll go great. But to make it a little better, to make it more focused, and have everybody more prepared, a set of core values says, what do I have to do to get through all these things to make it a complete, fun, and great experience? So two tools that I used that I introduced before were this work breakdown structure, where you have a hierarchical model, and your question for each of these is, what does it take to do this? So I contest logistics. What does it take to determine what the contest logistics are? Well, we need judges, we have Toastmasters, we have contestants, we need a test speaker. And so each time you just ask your question, you break it down until you get to an activity list. And that activity list are the things that you do to actually accomplish that. The other thing that I had was a roles and responsibilities chart. So I identified all the people who were going to be helping me and all the tasks that had to be done and who was responsible for doing them. And this one where I was doing a lot of stuff up front, but once we actually got to the contest, I was doing very little because the team already knew what they needed to do and had the tools to do it. So this is how I got it done. And it was a great contest. It was really well attended. We had incredible food. I heard it was the best food we ever had, thanks to Tony organizing our food contest. People were blown away that we provided two $50 certificates to the best food that people brought. We had homemade food instead of Costco food. It was fantastic. And it really made a great contest. So I can say all the great things that happened from it, but for me, what I got away from it are these lessons learned, because that's really where the growth is in something like this. And I do this, I'm a project manager at work, I direct a program, so I have a fair amount of experience in pulling things together and implementing them. But I have to say that this high performance leadership project kind of caught me off guard because I assumed that I knew what I was doing. And I did follow it, but when I didn't, the book that they have is actually really good, has a lot of good tools in it. And when I tried to skate past things, I always ran into some troubles. So really worth it to sit down and look. You always learn new tools and you can always do them. So my lessons learned were about recruiting your team, setting expectations, and communicating clearly, something we have to do in every project we take on. So recruiting your team. I was handed a team. Here's your team, the other area directors. They're going to help you pull this off. The problem was is they were not aware of that. But I walked in making the assumption that that was going to happen. And that got me into trouble from the very start. And so you really need to start every project ensuring that the people you have working with you have bought in, regardless of whether or not somebody assigns them to work on it or whether or not they step up to do it themselves. They have to know what they're walking into, and they have to really buy into the process and what you're doing. It's so critical. Setting expectations, that gets back to your recruiting your team. You have to spend the time to identify what needs to get done and set those expectations for what they need to do. Do it clearly, do it more clearly than you think you need to, because you might say something simple like, pull together the food, you're the food chair, awesome. But maybe your food chair hasn't been to an area contest before and doesn't know the food that needs to go there, doesn't know what the budget is, doesn't know the kind of food that they need to provide. So you need to be able to provide that information and not just assume that they'll know just by saying, here's the title, go forth. And so very valuable lesson for me. Communicating clearly also ties back to the first two. What I have going on in my head is very clear to me, but it's not clear until I take the time to express it, to write it down, to look at it and say, is that really what I'm trying to get across? And just make sure, and this is a whole speech or a whole course, I think actually, Tarni, you teach a course on communicating clearly, so this is a whole entire subject, but as it relates to the High Performance Leadership Project, it means you really need to think about how you're communicating, what you're expecting in terms of feedback coming back. So, does anybody have any questions on how I put that together and how it came out? Yes?
If you were going to do anything different, what would you do different now that you know how it worked out?
I would do a lot of things different. The very first thing I would do differently is not make any assumptions up front about what people are getting into, to ensure that I have buy-in. And I do this at work. I do a whole collaborative process that I run that pulls together what people are looking for and gets buy-in by them defining what the deadlines are, defining what the goals are. And it doesn't have to be that extravagant, but it would be something more careful, like having a couple of different meetings that say, where do we want to go with this? What's your vision? What are your goals if they're in the team pulling it together? That's one thing. I could go probably on that. Arnie?
Yeah, once you realized that your team didn't have the buy-in that you assumed, how were you able to overcome that and move past it?
It took some time. It took really just, I want to say swallowing my ego. I think that was the biggest part of it. Because I'd made these assumptions, I'd made these plans, I was off and running, and then suddenly I was standing there holding the ball by myself. And knowing that that wasn't something that wasn't how I wanted to proceed, it would take a lot of time and effort. It's probably why most people told me that if I'm an area director, I can't do the contest as an HPL. I don't know, but that was the biggest thing, is doing that. So. Another question? Yes. Okay.
Now that you've done it, Monique, is there anything that you would recommend to the district that can make the contest be better?
Going into it as I came on as an area director, I felt like there should be more that Toastmasters get out of it than just those contestants and the people who are participating, because that's why we wanted to do the food thing. And I think doing something like that would really improve the contest. There needs to be some other value. It needs to be a networking value, something there. And we talked about this, I talked about this with the district before we did it, but there wasn't anything concrete, and it wasn't wasn't really anything that came out of that for me. I mean, I was the one who needed to come up with something and implement something, and I was able to do the food thing, but I think there's more there that can provide value, and it can be promoted a little bit better, hearing better speakers and hearing advanced speakers and things like that. So I think that was kind of Carrie.
What would you say was your greatest moment in the sun, your best achievement or good feeling, or the thing that was just that sigh of, okay, this is why I'm doing this is what I love?
when the gavel went and it was done. But you know, one of the most embarrassing moments was when we were handing the awards out. I don't know if you remember that, but there was a photographer there, for those of you who weren't there, and Tatiana and I both are photography shy, and she was presenting the awards, and so I would hand her the award, turn around and walk away. The contestant was behind me getting their photograph with Tatiana, but Tatiana stepped out of the way. So most of the photographs are of Tatiana, you know, on the side, the contestant holding their award with me walking back. That's something we may need to work on. All right, I think I'm out of time. But, thank you.
Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guest, and especially Monique. Now, Monique was giving the final presentation for this high-performance leadership project, as the Toastmaster had mentioned, and it's also a speech, and so I'm going to evaluate it based upon the criteria that were given for this, but also as a speech. You did something very effective in the beginning, and you asked what I call a lawyer question. A lawyer never asks a question that she doesn't know the answer to. A mistake that's sometimes made is you ask a question, you're expecting people to say yes or raise their hand, and nobody does. You knew that there were a lot of people who were there, so you knew there were going to be hands raised. Another thing you did effectively with that is the way that you phrased it. Sometimes a question is phrased as, how many of you, and here's the thing, is if you're sitting in the audience, I'm not a how many of you. When you said, raise your hand if you, so, and I'm sitting in the audience, and you're talking to me, and I either was there or wasn't there, but that was very well done. You had a slideshow that was very effective as far as having very few words per slide and having very large font, with a couple of exceptions that I'm going to mention, some of which are font for improvement and some of which are actually okay. I particularly liked the slide on lessons learned. And again, you picked 3 points, and they were shown on the slides, and they were excellent takeaways that I think each of us, myself included, would take when doing a project like that. Buy-in, having realistic expectations, or at least communication. That's one of my big things. In terms of delivering the speech, your voice was very natural. You had good vocal variety. It wasn't a lot of vocal variety, and for a speech like this, you don't want to have a lot of Fred Sadler-like big gestures, but it was very appropriate, with one exception, which I will mention. Actually, I'll mention right now. At one point, you had what I call professorize. Professorize is when you're lecturing and you kind of do this a little bit. I'm exaggerating, but that disconnects from the audience. That was just one little glitch. The rest of it was absolutely fantastic. My suggestion on the lessons learned font could have been much bigger. You only had 3 points. And my suggestion for the core values, I think a picture, again, to connect with a picture for each of those. You had things that, teamwork, show a picture of a team. Time management, show a clock or something. Again, the picture would have enhanced. There was plenty of room for that. But overall, I liked how you related to your job, and I thought you did a particularly good job with the question and answer part. That was you used your table topics skills to effectively answer the question, and I liked how you used humor effectively with respect to Carrie's questions. They were somewhat challenging questions, not hardballs, but they weren't softballs either. Great job, and thank you very much.